You are watching an episode in our Landlording A to Z series, where we walk you through the steps, skills, and challenges involved with residential rental real estate investing. We share our expert advice, including the tips, tricks, and strategies we've learned over years of managing rental property. Please subscribe to our channel to get notified each time a new episode comes out, and please like and share our content with people you know who might be interested. Thanks for watching.
Hello, you have Chris and Eli here, the Landlord Gurus, and this is episode number 9 of our Landlording A to Z series, where we take you step by step all the way from deciding whether or not you want to be a landlord through getting an ad out there and showing the place. And, we've covered all of that. In our last episode, we talked about screening. And in this episode, we're going to focus just on the process of accepting or rejecting an applicant. So you have received their application, you've reviewed all their screening reports, you've contacted references, you've checked their credentials against your rental criteria checklist, which we keep harping on. This is a checklist you've created that details what the minimum criteria are that an applicant has to meet for you to accept them. So we're going to harp on that one more time. Use it, get that out there, compare the applicant to that criteria checklist. Do they have the income, the references, the history, that you're looking for, like if you want 3 years of rental history, for example, and all those types of things.
But I'd even mentioned, as part of that rental criteria, even things like, do they smoke or do they have pets? If those are all, criteria that you have determined either disqualifies them or you have certain conditions that must be met. And if they don't meet those, it's not just from the tenant screening report, it's all the other things as well.
Sure.
In terms of whether they're able to meet that, even, as far as are they able to move in when you want them to move in, and that, whenever you're starting the lease term or something like that. So
did they show up on time?
Yeah. Even things like
that. Some people use those types of software.
Yeah, they follow the rules when they got there. So all that, again, we'll link to our rental criteria checklist. We have a sample one on our website. We'll link to that, and we talk about all the different things that you might want to consider putting in there. And it really comes in handy for the first thing I'll talk about here is first in time rules. So what we have here in Seattle is a first in time rule. And I know that not everybody has that, but it's probably becoming more and more common. But if you're in a place where this exists, basically the gist is you must offer the tenancy to the first applicant who meets your criteria. So again, which is why we talk about having all the criteria thought about and in place before you even list your vacancy. So when the first person comes along, right, that you've thought about through that criteria, and then because if that first person comes along and they meet that criteria and they fill out an application and the screening report comes in good, right, you've got to make that offer to that first person. So along those same lines, because of that, we recommend only running a tenant screening report on just one person at a time for this reason, right? If you show the place to 3 people on the first day and all 3 want applications and they all fill it out and all 3 of them pay for a tenant screening report, then you're gonna have to go back. If the first one qualifies, then the second and third will have paid a screening report. And maybe that's fine if you let them know in advance. This is what might happen,
right?
And they can decide for themselves whether they want to submit an application or not. But
there's a balance to be struck there, because you don't want to put other people off. It depends on how quickly things are moving and how promising an potential applicant looks, and so you don't want to put people away either.
Yeah. And I think this was maybe something that I put in place even before we started using tenant screening software that made it so easy for someone to just apply online, where I was collecting a paper application and then also collecting that application fee at that time. And if they were the second or third and the first one qualified, then I'd have to somehow get them that check back, or if they paid cash, I'd have to give them that cash back. So
yeah, but
anyway, it's a little bit different now, but I think it's something to consider. But also just know that there are some of these first in time rules that are out there. And it's important, if you are subject to these first in time rules, it's important to follow those rules and understand what you need to do, and which is why we recommend getting that criteria on paper. And sometimes you're required to have that on paper or posted in the advertisement or even posted on site.
It's meant to help avoid discrimination.
Exactly.
So that, because if it's all written down, and also to save everybody's time, so that if an applicant can see ahead of time what they have to do to qualify, then they know whether or not they want to apply or not.
Exactly.
And nowhere in those criteria can race or sex or any of the other protected categories. Obviously you cannot discriminate, and then it just narrows it down to a fairly objective criteria. So
exactly, it doesn't leave room for too much subjectivity or squishiness in there to say, well, they both look the same on paper, but I like this one better, for whatever reason, right? So I'll just continue along the sort of the same, what we're talking about, kind of legal or regulatory stuff. There's something called an adverse action notice that you need to be aware of. If you reject an applicant due to the results of their screening report, you must send them an adverse action notice. I know this is the case here in Washington State. I don't know if this is the case everywhere across the
It
country.
is, yeah, this is a credit related rule, I believe.
Okay.
I believe it's specific to any adverse action that you take, i.e. if you reject somebody, or if you require a guarantor, or take other adverse actions because of something that you found on their credit report, then you need to tell that person why you did that, and then you need to give them. We'll link to this FTC article that'll show you this. But Chris, you need to tell them like where they can go to get their own credit report. I think they're then entitled to a free credit report for a certain amount of time after that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the regulations say that you have to give them this adverse action in notice electronically or orally, but we advise you doing this in writing so that everyone has a record of it. And in fact, a lot of the screening services will provide one for you if that you can then send that applicant if you need to. And some of them will automatically send that notice directly if you indicate through that screening software, if you indicate that you rejected them due to credit issues, that software might actually just send them that adverse action notice
It's a
directly.
pretty nice feature because it really is important. You don't want to mess with, I think it's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. You're absolutely required to give this notice, and you don't want to skip it. So.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So we've talked about what you do if you reject an applicant. Now, if you decide to accept an applicant, what do you have to do next, Eli?
Yeah, well, we advise you to take a deposit to secure occupancy. So essentially, this is a very quick agreement that you make where you get a partial deposit. Often it's a half month's rent, or sometimes it's the whole amount of the security deposit, enough to make it matter so that people won't walk away once you've pulled your ad down and you've stopped marketing it. You've told other interested parties that it's no longer available. So it gets the agreement rolling so that you can then move on to getting everything else official.
I think if you take it off the market and then this person says that, yeah, I'm going to move in, and the move-in date isn't for another 2 weeks, say, and you've taken it off the market, and then that first of the month comes around and they decide, no, I'm not going to move in, sorry, then you effectively lost 2 weeks of advertising. Potentially even, you might not be able to rent it or get someone in there till the first of the next month. And so, lose a month of income, which can hurt.
Right.
Having this deposit in place just kind of helps protect you in case they do walk away, you get some of your money back, or it just incentivizes them to stick with it.
Follow through.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and you do want to look at the local laws as to what's allowed. So in Washington, for example, a deposit to hold a unit can't be more than 25% of the first month's rent. So that's still, I don't know, $1,500 apartment, but still what,
$375.
Yeah. So you make sure you're in alignment with the laws on that. Find an appropriate agreement that outlines that the applicant is providing this deposit for the purpose of holding the unit. They're committing to it. This also acts as a receipt for the person who's paid the deposit. It shows that they paid it and why. And that agreement should state that the deposit will be forfeited if the tenant fails to sign the lease, pay the deposit, security deposits and first month's rent, and follows through as agreed upon. And then, only once you have that money and the document signed, should you take the property off the market and let everybody else know that it's no longer available, and then move on to writing your lease documents. So right away. And again, we talk all the time about property management software, but it's so easy to go from online applicant to a digital lease, to signing, to collecting rent. It makes everything super easy.
Exactly.
So,
and one thing I'll add, I was actually just looking at a deposit form, agreement that had a checkbox that stating what happens to that deposit when the person does move in and they do fulfill their obligation to move in. And you can have it applied either to the first month's rent, or you can have it applied to the security deposit. So, it even states what exactly that money is then going to be used for, so that there's no, like, oh, you kept that money, you're supposed to give it back, or, whatever it is, right? You can just hang on to it. You can apply it towards their deposit or whatever it is. And so, kind of a win-win in both situations.
Right. Yeah. Good. Okay. So our takeaways here are, when you are at that point where you're deciding to accept or reject an applicant, be methodical, use your checklist to make sure you're following your own guidelines on selecting this tenant. Do it in a legal way, send the adverse notice, follow first in time, and then take the deposit to make it official and keep everybody hooked into the deal, and potential tenants from walking away and leaving you holding the bag.
Exactly.
So, and then the next step, which will be our next episode, is writing rental agreements. So we'll get into where to get good documents and what they should include, and making it all official. So that'll be our next episode. And in the meantime, please take a second to like and share this video, subscribe to our channel so that you get notified each time one of our subsequent episodes comes out. And we hope we'll see you back here soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.